Hello everyone, welcome back to a new episode. Today we are going to do a backward analysis of a hand. So we are starting at the river and we're working our way back to the flop. Well, of course we are going to think about everything that happened pre-flop and on the flop when we make the analysis on the river. But we start with creating the range for the river. So let's first run through this hand. So under the gun, player opens. Um, we check, he checks, we check again, he checks again, and on the river he bets. So now we are going to think about what hands is he betting here for value. I already thought about some hands, and all these pairs are probably going to be bet for value. And then when you think about it, there are only a few more hands left, which are possibly not even in his range, and it are those weak aces. So this is the weakest offsuit ace he has, but in fact some people might not even open it, or actually it is probably not a good open from early position. So this hand might actually not even be in his range, and these aces he might have decided to already bet them on the flop, which he probably should with at least some frequency. And I assume these he's definitely going to bet because it's two pair, and I also think that this ace 8, ace 9, ace 10, they probably bet this flop. Not always, but most likely. And I already think that adding 3 combos of these, so every time he checks these, and in fact there can be 3 combos, right? Yeah, there can be, but not anymore on the river. So on the river there are only 2 combinations actually. Yeah, so this hand also put in half, and he might also bet this, so this should actually also be like 25% in my opinion. He's not going to have these hands that he's not going to have an ace that often. Those are 36 combinations here, 8 here is 44, and 3 here, so around 47 combinations. And then when you think about how many possible bluffs does he has, it's also not that easy thinking about bluffs because, for example, the king, he's never going to really bluff these hands because he's probably going to take his showdown value just when the pot. He doesn't want to get check raised, bluffed. So his king will be often good when uh, all the streets are checked, and 10-9 he's probably going to bet as a bluff either on the flop or turn. Same for 9-8. 7-6 is he's betting on them on the flop. So maybe these low pairs, but again they maybe aren't in his opening range, and they probably shouldn't be in his opening range. So yeah, and maybe then a hand like Queen 10, which wouldn't bluff at a point, so without the flush draw, is maybe going to stab now, but what is he actually hoping to get folds by? I don't know, maybe like pocket eights or something. So maybe he wants to make king fold. That makes sense, I think. Um, yeah. So and ace jack, ace queen, aces is all going to bet them at some point. Maybe king queen off, king jack. So really hard to find any bluffs actually. So he has way more value bets than bluffs here. So now, which hands do we have in this spot? So all hands we check 3 times. So these pocket pairs, sixes probably bet on the turn. Sevens we could have, but Do we bet the turn with pocket sevens? Probably not. I don't know. Maybe we should. Um, and then again, do we bet the river or do we check and make him induce? Hope that he bets and we can check raise. That's probably best. I don't know. Maybe we shouldn't do it with sevens because he might be raising an ace if he has one. So it's debatable. Sevens, eights is certainly possible. Nines as well. Tens. Yeah. You could argue that you bet these hands on the turn, like protection bets against his king queens, king jacks. You know, queen 10 when you have pocket nines, you don't mind it folding. What else do we have? We might have some of these weak aces. We probably have more aces than him. Well, we got to this river, but the biggest or most important question is how many of the aces should we check and how many should we bet? I don't know. I would be inclined to bet, but actually thinking about it, we can't bet them all because that would be then if we check it would be very easy to put it on range. We basically only have these pairs. Maybe we can also have some give ups, but a lot of these hands like 4-8, 7-4, 7-4s of course. We bet every 7 for value on the turn for sure. We probably don't defend 7-3, 7 deuce. So 6 deuce is probably also checked all the way, which yeah we might bluff now, or I'm not sure. So I've changed things up a little bit, and this is now the turn range. Because we really need to understand what happens on the turn to be able to define a good river range, and it wasn't that easy to do it all in my head, so I wanted to also put it down, think about it. So far I have this, which are the blue hands we're going to bet, these hands we're going to check on the turn. Now these hands we don't have because we're 3-betting them pre-flop. Jacks is probably also call, so I'm going to add it. These hands we don't defend. Ace 9 is borderline defend or not, but again it's the 3x, which is was in this case. We shouldn't be defending ace 9. Now these kings, for example, again with the flush draw, I'm going to add them. We are going to bet them for sure. Otherwise you might check them, and here it's the same story, but okay, yeah. So all these hands now, do we have ace queen suited? Probably, yeah, but we're definitely betting that on the turn. Same for ace jack, ace 10 here also, ace 9 probably as well. Because since he's checking, thing is he would be betting ace king, ace queen, ace jack a lot. So what do you fear when you have ace 9 in this spot is that you are going to be beaten by those hands. But since he's going to bet them on the flop most of the time, we shouldn't be that afraid of them. So we're probably going to bet these for sure, and then these this is basically the nuts. I think we should bet it. I'm not sure. Maybe we should trap it. I'm gonna leave it open for a moment. Ace 6 then again is maybe like borderline. Ace 5, you can question those. I'm going to leave them open for a moment. Not really sure. And then the king queens offsuits and the king 10, queen 10, queen jack, jack 10. what are you doing with those? I'm going to pause the video and I'm going to look at the combinations and the amount of hands we're checking and betting. So I wrote down a lot of the combinations. So betting for value and protection, we have all these hands, not going to go through them. So these are 87 in total. Then in bluffs we have flush draws and open-ended straight draws and gut shots, who are 40, which are 43 combinations. So now we have these hands left. So all these, those are 15 combinations, and then all these hands here, those are a lot more, 60, 72 combinations. So these are actually also, of course, bluffs. So when we add the 43, we come to 115, and here for value bets, so 1587 is 102. But we also have pocket sevens, which we might bet well, but it's only one combo, so it's not going to make a lot of difference. So we can, of course, start betting every ace, because we would be very unbalanced then. Against, of course, certain opponents this wouldn't really matter, but thinking about a perfect strategy, it does. So I probably wouldn't be betting these hands, because these are also the ones most how do I say this, susceptible to kicker problems. Then a7 and 7s are only two combos, but you should definitely check those. I think against certain opponents you just bet them for value. So I'm going to add 7s here. So maybe I should think also about how many hands am I checking right now. Let's calculate this and be right back. So we already have 117 hands who are being checked, and bets we already have 103 plus the 43 bluffs is 146 bets, and we have these hands. Yeah, you shouldn't maybe add these 103. Well, I should say these 15, 16 hands now. So bets, I'm going to leave it at 130. So we still have these ones to divide, I should say. Also, we should be thinking about putting some really strong hands in our checking range. So, and also some aces. So I'm going to add these ones to our checking range. So that's 16 plus 16 makes it 1, 3, 3. And then these 72 combos. Don't know why 115. Oh, it's together with these. It's not so interesting. So, so we are bluffing 43 hands with equity, and maybe if we now check these hands, we are going to have 200 checking hands, 130 betting hands. The question is, does it really matter that much? I'm not sure. I think this is fine strategy, right? Thing is, these hands, king, queen, king, jack, they can still win, so they don't really mind checking. Maybe you could think check 10 off could be bluff, but out of position you mostly want to bluff with some equity, so I wouldn't really bluff them. So I guess this is a pretty decent strategy. So we're adding these into the checks, which makes for 205 checks, 130 bets. Yeah, let's leave it like that. So now I've copied the turn range, and we are on the river now, and I'm going to just remove this range. So these are all the hands we've checked. So now question comes, do we want to bet some hands for value? Do we want to bet some hands as bluffs? First of all, I think, for example, I'm going to put the hands that check in this color. So which hands are checking? The king highs, I suppose, are checking. So I edited that for a second. So now we already have 63 combinations that check with king as showdown value. Now let's see how many aces do we have. So a7 was one combination, a6 2, then the others were 4 times 3, so 12, 16 combinations, right? And then pocket sevens you want to bet is like 17 combos of like pure value, meaning that we call if they raise probably with the ace only as a chop, but we can pick up some bluffs. So with sevens, of course, we 17 combos of value. So this is already a problem. Well, problem, I'm not sure if it's a problem, but thing is, we are having so many weak hands because we also have these and these and these hands, and these all give up. So I don't know, it seems so shitty to come with this range to the river. I don't know, but can we really afford to bluff more of these hands? Let's maybe calculate how many pairs we have that we could like bet for value, but I'm not sure. Can we bet eights for value? Maybe to get calls from king high, maybe. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4 combinations of 6 pairs. So it's only 24 combos of pairs. Yeah. And how many more bluffs do we have? Like these are 36. These 4, 5 is 15 more, and so those are like over 60 again. So we're having way more pure air, and this is also air. So we have an insane amount of air, and only these amounts, only 41 combinations of value. The reason why this actually isn't really a problem is because when we call from the big blind, we get so much better odds. So we invest less to see the flop, and since we get to the river just by checking, the same situation applies now a bit for the river, you know. So it's not because I made a way to lose call on the flop or turn that I now have an amount of bluffs that is way too much, because On the flop, anyways, when they see bet, we fold 60% or something, maybe even more on this flop anyways. So this scenario is now basically repeating itself on the river. I like to run solvers, so again with this hand I added the ranges from the Big Blind Defend and the Open Razors range. Nothing special. Then so we check our whole range. And then as expected, he should actually bet basically 100% of his range here. I already made this Excel document, excuse me, where I looked at in position, equity, out of positions, equity. I looked at the CBIT percentage, so it is 100% and it's 90% of the time he chooses 1/3 pot size, 10% 2/3 pot size, but it's not really that interesting because as you can see he's betting this sizing with, or rather this sizing with almost all hands most of the time, and then he's choosing the bigger sizing sometimes. I'm not really sure why that is. Basically we shouldn't use the bigger sizing, we should just bet small on this board every single time with our whole range. Then we look at the out of positions player when he bets, and because this is most interesting scenario because he should be betting and our villain in this hand didn't bet. But when he bets, this is our response. So we are folding what kind of hands. So for example the Broadway crap, it's folded. What else? That's basically it. It's the smallest pocket pairs. Deuces, fives, eights, nines. It's a bit surprising we fold aces, eights and nines. Even tens often. Yeah. Fold. Small pocket pairs. Even. 8, 8, 9, 9. And then so yeah, that's basically it. The call, what hands are we calling? Basically every ace except ace 7, ace 6, ace queen sometimes. So every ace, except ace 6, 7 and queen sometimes. Let's just leave it like this. So every 6, every 7 is calling. So every 6, 7 basically. Also, of course, all of flush draws. Call every ace, all flush draws, and the raise is basically sixes, sevens, 6, 7, and then some gut shots, some open-enders, and some gut shots, some open-enders. And ace queen, ace jack suited, for example. Ace queen, ace jack suited, clubs. So that's about it. Yeah, I'm going to change this for now. I'm going to leave it for now and change it later. Yeah, so now the problem we are having with analyzing our hands is the fact that our villain checked, and it doesn't really like what I want to say. He checks, and that is not the strategy he should be using. So PioSolver now is playing against, like you saw, the 2.6% frequency should be checking, which is basically never. So the results are quite strange now for the turn. But as you can see, we're checking actually 70% of the time, and betting, we're over betting most of the time, basically really big. That's interesting. So if he checks, we overbet this turn. I realized we should bet big, but we are actually overbetting. That's interesting. And so let's take a look at the range we came up with. Excuse me. And the PioSolver range. So yeah, you can kind of see it. Doesn't really matter that much. So in fact, he is checking all these hands like we thought. He's betting these most of the time, but actually ace 8, ace 9 most of the time is still checked. He's checking all these hands. He's betting these hands most of the time. The thing is, villain's range in reality is actually just basically very often kings, queens, jacks, tens, eights, nines, eights and nines might even decide to bet. So we very often king, queen, jacks, and he's not going to fold these. And so yeah, I was thinking then, why isn't he always betting ace 10? Because of course this program, if he checks, he's balanced, he has enough value, but our villain here almost never has an ace, maybe just a weak ace. Yeah. But we were in the right thought bet. Of course, we betting every 7. A lot of these gut shots, they are betting. You did very weak flush draws, they are betting. So we covered most of the important things in this hand. So first of all, in position players should be c-betting this board 100% of the time. When he checks, he's very weighted to like kings, queens, jacks, or maybe weak aces. Or maybe he's just weak player, and he also has like this queen tens which he doesn't want to bet. And so I think on the river actually we might be able to raise really big and get him off most of these hands. Of course, you can't do it against every opponent, because they will also often think you are full of shit and you will probably have bet the ace. But anyways, it's an interesting spot for sure. I'm going to wrap this video up right here. See you in the next one. Adios.